Mahapajapati Gotami, a name that echoes through time. She was not just the mother of Siddhartha Gautama the Buddha, but the first woman to lead a revolution in Buddhist history. Born into a society that restricted women from pursuing spiritual paths, Mahapajapati defied tradition. She nurtured Siddhartha when his biological mother passed away, becoming the rock in his early life. Her maternal love was not just limited to caring for him. She shaped his heart with lessons of love, sacrifice, and responsibility. But Mahapajapati's story doesn't end with her role as a mother. Her true legacy began when she took a bold step that forever changed the face of Buddhism. She was the first woman to request to join the Sangha, to leave her royal life behind and walk the path of enlightenment alongside the men, even when society tried to limit her. Mahapajapati's story isn't just a historical account. It's a tale of courage, defiance, and transformation. Imagine a world where women had no place in the monastic community. Yet Mahapajapati stood up and showed us that the road to enlightenment isn't limited by gender. She didn't just fight for her own spiritual journey, but for every woman who would come after her. Have you ever wondered if women in ancient times could challenge the system like this? Mahapajapati's journey shows us that true change begins with bold, courageous steps, no matter how difficult or unconventional they may seem. Here at Son.Mindfulness, we believe that each story carries a lesson that speaks to the hearts of all of us, especially those seeking peace, understanding, and spiritual growth. Mahapajapati Gotami's story is one of empowerment, inner strength, and breaking free from societal limitations. If this story inspires you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel to continue exploring these transformative stories from the Buddha's family. Your support helps us continue bringing wisdom, love, and peace to everyone. Thank you for being here. We wish you health, peace, happiness, and may you always walk the path of kindness and enlightenment. Our channel brings the timeless wisdom of Buddhist philosophy into everyday life, helping you discover deeper meaning, balance, and inner peace. If you're looking for spiritual growth, self-discovery, or just need a moment of calm in your busy day, you're in the right place. May you always be healthy, at peace, happy, and lucky. Subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming stories about the Buddha's family, especially Mahapajapati Gotami, the pioneering woman in Buddhism. Part 2. The Tragedy and the Calling, Becoming a Mother to the Buddha. From the pain of loss, she found purpose. From the silence of the past, she became a voice for future generations. Mahapajapati Gotami's life began with sorrow. She was married to a king, but her happiness was fleeting. Her firstborn child passed away, leaving her heartbroken. It was from this deep grief that she learned the impermanence of life. And it was from this loss that her journey toward a greater calling began. But her true purpose would not be realized until she came to be the mother to Siddhartha Gautama, the man who would one day become the Buddha. When the queen, Siddhartha's biological mother, passed away shortly after childbirth, it was Mahapajapati Gotami who stepped in, offering her love and care. She did not need to be asked. It was as if fate had already written her role. Her heart opened to the young prince as if he were her own. In a time when women's roles were limited to the home, Mahapajapati showed the true power of a mother's love. Her role in Siddhartha's life was crucial. She nurtured his body, but she also nurtured his mind, subtly teaching him important lessons without ever uttering a word. Siddhartha from a young age was keenly aware of the questions of life. Questions that Mahapajapati herself had struggled with after losing her own child. She had learned to live with the truth of impermanence, and in doing so, she passed that wisdom on to the child she raised. Her love was not just one of physical care, but one of spiritual guidance. Even as Siddhartha grew older, he often sought comfort in the quiet moments he shared with her. Mahapajapati was always there, offering solace through her calm presence. She was not just a mother to him in the traditional sense. She was a spiritual guide, teaching him resilience, compassion, and acceptance. But there was something else brewing deep within her. The truth that Siddhartha would soon discover, that the world of material comfort and royal splendor would never bring him the lasting happiness he sought, was also a truth that Mahapajapati had learned long before him. Her own loss had shown her that worldly attachments are fleeting, and that the true path to peace lay beyond the comforts of a palace. In her heart, she had always known that the royal life could not be the ultimate goal for Siddhartha. But she did not want him to be trapped in a world of endless luxury and distractions. She believed he needed something more than riches and pleasure. He needed the wisdom of understanding the truth of life, just as she had begun to understand after facing her own suffering. As Siddhartha grew, Mahapajapati's concern deepened. She saw his restlessness, the questions that filled his mind, the longing for something beyond the walls of the palace. She understood that he was searching for the same answers she had once sought, answers that only spiritual enlightenment could provide. And as a mother, she wanted to ensure he would find it, even if it meant he would leave the palace behind. Mahapajapati had always known that she was not just a mother to Siddhartha. She was also a part of his journey. It wasn't just about nurturing him through childhood, but about allowing him to find his own path, even if that meant letting go. The day Siddhartha left the palace, she did not try to stop him. She knew that the time had come for him to follow his own heart. The weight of attachment, the comforts of the palace, and the expectations of his family were not the life he was destined to lead. Siddhartha's departure would mark the beginning of a new chapter. Not just for him, but for Mahapajapati as well. She had raised him well, and now it was time for him to find the answers to the questions that had once consumed her. But Mahapajapati's role in this journey would not end there. She would soon take her own step toward enlightenment, to walk a path she had longed to tread. Mahapajapati's legacy is not just in the way she raised Siddhartha, but in the example she set for all women. Her life was a testament to the power of courage, sacrifice, and spiritual awakening. She did not live to simply serve the royal family. She lived to see the truth beyond what the world could offer. And in doing so, she not only paved the way for Siddhartha's eventual awakening, but also for all women who would follow in her footsteps. This was the beginning of Mahapajapati Gotami's own spiritual journey. She would go on to become the first woman to ask for permission to join the Sangha and become a Bhikkhuni, a revolutionary move in a society that had long kept women out of spiritual life. But this decision would not come easily. It would require her to challenge the norms of the time. She would soon show the world that even women could attain enlightenment, and their journey was just as important as that of men. Part 3. The Moment of Change, the Call for Women in the Sangha. To challenge tradition is not to rebel against the past, but to help create a more inclusive future. Mahapajapati Gotami had always been a quiet force, yet her life was building toward a decisive moment, one that would echo through centuries. After Siddhartha left the palace and became the Buddha, Mahapajapati watched from the sidelines as the world celebrated his enlightenment. But something in her heart stirred, a deep longing that could no longer be ignored. She had already sacrificed much for the greater good, nurturing Siddhartha, supporting him in his quest for enlightenment. But now, as the Buddha's teachings began to spread, Mahapajapati realized that something crucial was missing. There were no women in the Sangha, no female monks, no opportunity for women to walk the path of spiritual liberation. For years, Mahapajapati watched as men filled the ranks of the Buddha's followers. She knew that the Buddha's message of compassion and freedom from suffering was universal, meant for all beings, regardless of gender. But society, bound by tradition, did not see women as worthy of the same spiritual freedom. Women were excluded from the Sangha, and the teachings of the Buddha were thus incomplete. They did not reach half of humanity. Mahapajapati could no longer accept this inequality. Her heart ached to see so many women who wished to walk the path of enlightenment, but had no path to follow. She had already shown strength in the face of personal tragedy, in the raising of Siddhartha, and in accepting the impermanence of life. But this was different. This was a challenge not only to the society's structure, but to the spiritual norms that excluded women. Determined to change the course of history, Mahapajapati gathered a group of women, royal women, mothers, and even servants, all united by a common desire, to seek enlightenment just as men did. They shaved their heads, put on yellow robes, and marched to the Buddha's monastery. This was not a gesture of rebellion. It was a call for equality, a plea for the recognition of women's spiritual potential. They were not demanding to be included in the Sangha. They were claiming their right to enlightenment, just as any man had the right. When Mahapajapati and the women arrived at the gates of the monastery, they were met with resistance. The Buddha, seeing the group of women standing at the gates, was hesitant. He knew the significance of their request, but he was concerned about the teachings he had set forth. The initial response from the Buddha was no. The monastic community had not been set up for women. He believed it was not yet time for women to join the Sangha. But Mahapajapati Gotami did not give up. She returned again and again, asking the Buddha to accept women into the monastic life. She did not fight him. She simply asked for justice, for a chance for women to find their own path to awakening. Finally, after many requests, the Buddha was moved by Mahapajapati's unwavering determination. He realized that true liberation and compassion meant that no being, regardless of gender, should be excluded from the path of enlightenment. Reluctantly, but with profound wisdom, the Buddha agreed to allow women to be ordained as monks. But the journey didn't end there. The Buddha's decision was monumental, but it was Mahapajapati Gotami's strength and perseverance that made it possible. She not only changed the course of history by becoming the first woman to be ordained in the Sangha, but she also became the leader of the first community of Buddhist nuns, the Bhikkhuni Sangha. Her actions showed the world that enlightenment is not bound by gender. Her example proved that strength, wisdom, and compassion could be found in every human being, regardless of their gender or status in society. Through her persistence, Mahapajapati did not just pave the way for women to become monks. She set the stage for gender equality in the spiritual realm. Her courage and leadership gave women a voice in the Sangha, a place where they could explore their potential and contribute to the world's spiritual awakening. Mahapajapati's legacy is not just about being the first woman in the Sangha. It is about the courage to stand up against tradition, to make a stand for the dignity and spiritual potential of women, and to create a path where no one is excluded from the possibility of true freedom and awakening. Part 4. The first woman to lead. Entering the Sangha. When a woman steps into her own light, the world is forever changed. The decision to allow Mahapajapati Gotami and the women to join the Sangha was groundbreaking, but the real challenge began when the Buddha agreed. For centuries, women had been excluded from the monastic life, seen as unfit for the spiritual practice that was reserved for men. Now, Mahapajapati's bold request had created a new possibility for women in the Buddhist community. However, the journey ahead would not be without its obstacles. Mahapajapati was not just asking for herself. She was asking for every woman who had been excluded from the path of enlightenment. She was not just a mother to Siddhartha, she was a mother to all women seeking the same spiritual freedom. As the first woman to be ordained, Mahapajapati Gotami faced the scrutiny of those around her. There were many who believed that a woman's place was not in the Sangha. Some monks objected, arguing that allowing women to join would weaken the purity of the monastic community. But Mahapajapati, with the same courage that had driven her to challenge tradition, stood firm in her resolve. She was determined to show the world that the path to enlightenment was open to all, regardless of gender, status, or background. When Mahapajapati was finally accepted into the Sangha, it was not just a personal victory. It was a revolution, one that would set the stage for women to become not only followers, but leaders in the Buddhist community. Mahapajapati didn't simply take the title of a Bhikkhuni, female monk. She became a leader, a teacher, and a beacon of strength for other women. She gathered women who sought refuge in the teachings of the Buddha and showed them that spiritual liberation was just as available to them as it was to men. She began to teach, not just as a disciple of the Buddha, but as a spiritual leader in her own right. Her teachings focused on compassion, discipline, and the liberation of the mind. She didn't just teach the women in her community to meditate, she taught them to embrace their own power and transform their suffering into wisdom. Mahapajapati's leadership was not just about establishing the Bhikkhuni Sangha. It was about setting an example of spiritual maturity that didn't require men to lead the way. Her teachings emphasized the idea that women had the same capacity for spiritual insight and awakening as men. And in leading the Sangha, Mahapajapati showed that gender had no bearing on one's ability to achieve enlightenment. She was not just a symbolic figure. She was a true spiritual powerhouse who proved through her actions that women could transcend societal limitations and claim their place in the spiritual world. One of Mahapajapati Gotami's greatest accomplishments was establishing the monastic discipline for nuns that would guide generations of women to come. The Vinaya, the code of conduct for monks and nuns, became the foundation of the Bhikkhuni Sangha. Mahapajapati's role in this was crucial, as she helped to create a system that allowed women to live their lives dedicated to service, meditation, and spiritual practice, in a way that had not been possible before. Her legacy is not just one of being the first woman to be ordained. It is the legacy of a woman who changed the face of Buddhism, who challenged patriarchal structures, and who led a community of women to discover their true spiritual potential. Through Mahapajapati Gotami's journey, we learn that true leadership is not about domination or control. It is about compassion, humility, and the willingness to serve others. Mahapajapati's leadership was not just in what she accomplished, but in how she lived her life. She led by example, showing the world that spiritual liberation was not a privilege reserved for the few, but a right for all. In the next chapter, Part 5, The Role of Mahapajapati Gotami, a Teacher for Women, we will explore how Mahapajapati became a spiritual teacher for women, inspiring countless others to walk the path of mindfulness, meditation, and enlightenment. Part 5, The Role of Mahapajapati Gotami, a Teacher for Women. A true teacher is not one who gives answers, but one who leads you to your own truth. After Mahapajapati Gotami became the first woman to be ordained in the Sangha, her role went far beyond that of a follower. She didn't just accept ordination. She embraced her spiritual calling as a teacher, a mentor, and a leader for women who sought a path of liberation. At the time, women were still seen as inferior in many ways. Most spiritual practices were designed with men in mind, leaving women excluded from higher spiritual teachings and practices. But Mahapajapati Gotami showed that women were just as capable of achieving enlightenment and embodying the Buddha's teachings. As the leader of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, Mahapajapati was more than just a spiritual mother. She was a spiritual teacher, guiding her community of women with wisdom, compassion, and a deep understanding of the Dharma. She didn't just teach them how to meditate or how to follow the rules. She taught them how to live mindfully, how to overcome their fears, and how to embrace their true nature. Her teachings were deeply rooted in the principles of compassion, discipline, and self-realization. She encouraged her students to explore their own inner world, to question their attachments, and to cultivate wisdom through their own experiences. Mahapajapati believed that true spiritual development came from self-discovery rather than blind obedience. She encouraged the women of the Sangha to live with purpose, to follow the teachings of the Buddha, not out of obligation, but out of a genuine desire to grow spiritually. In one of her recorded teachings, Mahapajapati said, "Do not seek comfort in the external world, for it is impermanent. True peace is found within, in the stillness of your own heart." These words resonated deeply with the women she taught. She reminded them that liberation is not about escaping the world, but about learning how to be at peace with the world as it is. She was also a strong advocate for the sisterhood among women in the Sangha. She encouraged them to support each other, to practice loving kindness and compassion, not just in meditation, but in their everyday interactions. For Mahapajapati, the spiritual community was not just about following rules, but about creating an environment of mutual care and understanding. In the years that followed, Mahapajapati continued to teach, guide, and inspire countless women. Her influence was not limited to the Bhikkhuni Sangha. Her teachings spread to women all across India, and her example became a beacon for all who sought spiritual freedom. But it wasn't just about the big teachings, the ones that would be passed down through history. Mahapajapati's most powerful teaching was in how she lived her life. She showed the women of the Sangha that spirituality was not about separation from the world, but about living deeply in the world with full awareness. She taught that true wisdom was in embracing the fullness of life, not in escaping it. She showed that ordinary acts of kindness, deep listening, and true service were as powerful as any formal meditation practice. Her students, many of whom had been left out of the spiritual community because of their gender, learned from her example that spiritual wisdom and compassionate action were not just for the privileged few. They were for everyone, for all beings, regardless of gender, status, or background. Mahapajapati Gotami's teachings have lasted for centuries, and today we can still see the impact of her work. Her vision for a more inclusive, compassionate spiritual path has continued to influence the role of women in Buddhism and in many other spiritual traditions. By the time Mahapajapati passed away, she had left an indelible mark on the world. She had opened doors for women to find spiritual freedom, and in doing so, she had changed the course of Buddhist history. Her teachings remind us that true spiritual leadership is not about titles or fame. It is about service, compassion, and the willingness to share the wisdom we have gained with others. In the next chapter, Part 6, The Legacy of Mahapajapati Gotami, the first Bhikkhuni, we will explore the lasting impact of her legacy, and how her courage continues to inspire generations of women to walk the path of awakening. Part 6, The Legacy of Mahapajapati Gotami, the first Bhikkhuni. Her legacy was not written in scriptures, but lived in the hearts of those she taught. Mahapajapati Gotami's legacy is one of the most profound in the history of Buddhism. Not because of her titles or her position in the Sangha, but because of the deep changes she brought to the role of women in the spiritual world. She was the first woman to be ordained as a bhikkhuni, but her impact went far beyond that. When Mahapajapati received ordination, it was not just a personal victory for her. It was a victory for all women who had been excluded from the spiritual path. It was a turning point in the history of Buddhism, as it opened the doors for women to walk the same path as men, the path to enlightenment. But Mahapajapati's legacy is not simply about her own ordination. It is about the world she helped create. A world where women could step out of the shadows and become leaders in their own right. a world where spiritual freedom was no longer confined by gender. She taught us that spirituality is not about who we are in the world, but who we are within. Her message was clear. Everyone has the potential to awaken, no matter their background, their gender, or their status in life. By breaking the barriers of gender inequality, Mahapajapati Gotami made it clear that the path to enlightenment is for all beings. Her influence was not limited to her lifetime. The Bhikkhuni Sangha that she founded grew and thrived, becoming a model for future generations of female practitioners. Mahapajapati's teachings lived on in the women who followed in her footsteps, who took her lessons to heart and shared them with their own communities. In the centuries that followed, many of the teachings of Mahapajapati Gotami became a core part of Buddhist practice, particularly in the Sangha of women. Her teachings were passed down through generations, inspiring countless women to embrace the path of monasticism and meditation. Her compassionate leadership created a model for how women could become both spiritual leaders and teachers in their own right. She showed that leadership in the spiritual community is not about holding power or authority, but about service, humility, and the ability to guide others to find their own path. Mahapajapati's legacy also redefined the role of women in the religious and spiritual world. Before her, women were often seen as secondary in religious practices. Her actions were a powerful reminder that spiritual greatness is not defined by gender or societal expectations, but by inner wisdom, compassion, and dedication to the path of enlightenment. As the first Bhikkhuni, Mahapajapati not only became a symbol of spiritual freedom for women, but also paved the way for gender equality in the Buddhist tradition. Her courage and her actions laid the groundwork for the modern role of women in Buddhism, and her teachings continue to resonate in the lives of women who walk the path of spiritual awakening today. Today, the Bhikkhuni Sangha remains a vital part of Buddhism, with women continuing to play a leading role in spreading the Buddha's teachings across the globe. Mahapajapati Gotami's influence can be seen in the many women who lead communities, teach the Dharma, and inspire others with their example of strength, compassion, and spiritual discipline. In the end, Mahapajapati's greatest legacy is not just what she achieved, but how she lived. Her life was a testament to the power of determination, compassion, and wisdom. She proved that true spiritual freedom comes not from following others, but from embracing your own truth and living in accordance with it. Her legacy continues to inspire us today. It shows us that no one is excluded from the path of awakening, and that the power to change the world begins with the courage to follow the truth of our hearts. Part 7. A Legacy of Inner Peace. What Mahapajapati Gotami left behind. Her legacy is not just what she did, but how she made us feel that peace and wisdom are within reach for all of us. The name Mahapajapati Gotami will forever be etched in the history of Buddhism. She was not just the first woman to be ordained as a bhikkhuni. She was the first woman to boldly challenge the boundaries of what was possible for women in the spiritual world. But beyond her ordination, beyond her leadership in the Bhikkhuni Sangha, her true legacy lies in the peace and wisdom she inspired in others. Her life reminds us that true peace is not something we seek from the world. It is something we cultivate within. And Mahapajapati Gotami did just that. She built a community of inner peace by showing others the way. Her spiritual journey was not just about her own liberation. It was about helping others find their own inner freedom. She created a space where women could become leaders in their own right, teaching them to embrace the stillness and clarity that comes with true spiritual practice. In the years after her ordination, Mahapajapati didn't just teach with words. She led by example. Her life was a living testament to the power of humility, compassion, and wisdom. She showed us that true spiritual awakening doesn't come from titles or recognition. It comes from living authentically, with deep respect for oneself and others. Her teachings were simple but profound. Be kind. Be present. Be aware of your actions and your thoughts. Live in accordance with your true nature. These principles became the foundation of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, and they continue to guide the lives of those who walk the path of mindfulness and awakening today. Mahapajapati's legacy extends beyond the walls of monasteries and the rituals of spiritual practice. It's about living in harmony with the world. It's about seeing that the path to enlightenment is open to all, and that true freedom comes from self-awareness, self-compassion, and self-realization. Her impact is still felt today in the global Buddhist community, especially within the Bhikkhuni Sangha. Women all over the world, inspired by her courage, continue to lead and teach, sharing the wisdom she left behind. Through Mahapajapati Gotami's example, we learn that the journey of spiritual awakening is not limited by gender, status, or background. It is a journey that can be walked by anyone, at any age, from any walk of life. She showed us that the path to inner peace begins with the courage to break free from external expectations and listen to the wisdom within. As Mahapajapati's life unfolded, it became clear that spiritual awakening was not a destination. It was a journey of constant learning, humility, and service. Her legacy is not something confined to history. It lives on in every person who chooses to follow the path of truth, regardless of their circumstances. Through her life and teachings, Mahapajapati Gotami reminds us that true peace is found when we align ourselves with the present moment, when we accept our imperfections, and when we live with deep respect for the impermanence of all things. Mahapajapati Gotami's legacy is a legacy of empowerment and liberation. It is a reminder that no one is ever truly powerless. Every individual, regardless of their background, has the ability to awaken and bring peace to themselves and others. Her teachings have transcended time and space, continuing to inspire generations of women and men alike to embrace the practice of mindfulness, meditation, and spiritual discipline. Mahapajapati Gotami left behind a community of awakened beings, and in doing so, she set the foundation for a future where spirituality knows no boundaries. Today, as we reflect on her life and teachings, we can honor her by walking our own paths with courage, humility, and wisdom. Mahapajapati Gotami showed us that the road to enlightenment is never easy, but it is a road worth traveling, for it is the road to freedom, peace, and true happiness. Conclusion: embracing change and living with courage. As we come to the end of Mahapajapati Gotami's story, we see a woman whose strength and courage changed the course of Buddhist history. She was not only the mother of Siddhartha, but also the first woman to challenge society's limits, opening the path for women in Buddhism. Her legacy teaches us that true enlightenment does not belong to any gender, but to those who are willing to break free from societal constraints and seek the truth within. The life of Mahapajapati Gotami reminds us that true freedom comes when we let go of limitations. She didn't just ask for a seat at the table. She created a space where women could step forward into the light. She showed us that spirituality is not about following traditions blindly, but about questioning, growing, and creating our own path toward inner peace. So I ask you, what are the limitations in your own life that you've accepted as unchangeable? Is there a part of your own spiritual journey that you've been too afraid to begin? Could you, like Mahapajapati, challenge the boundaries in your own life and step into a new beginning? As we reflect on the lessons Mahapajapati Gotami shared, I encourage you to take them to heart. Start by questioning the norms in your own life that hold you back. Ask yourself how you can bring more compassion, awareness, and freedom into your daily practices. The path is not easy, but it is worth it, and you don't have to walk it alone. Thank you for watching, for taking the time to reflect on Mahapajapati's story. I hope this story has inspired you as much as it has inspired me. Please feel free to share your thoughts, questions, and experiences in the comments below. I would love to hear how this story resonates with you. Your voice is important, and your journey matters. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Son.Mindfulness for more stories, teachings, and wisdom. By subscribing, you join a community of people who are seeking growth, peace, and mindful living. May you always walk the path of peace and wisdom. May you find strength in your own journey and courage to face any challenges ahead. Wishing you health, happiness, and may you always meet life's challenges with an open heart. I am truly grateful for your support. Thank you again for being part of this journey, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.